Hello, and welcome to the new government monitoring information requirements that will be going into effect January 1st of 2018. This will be starting with all applications taken on or after January 1st, 2018, and mortgage advisors must collect the new government monitoring information data, also known as GMI data. This government monitoring information will go in the new demographic information addendum to be used along with the standard 1003. So it will no longer just be the 1003 that gathers this government monitoring information. And how the new government monitoring information is collected will depend completely on how the mortgage advisor collects this information from the borrower, whether that's face-to-face, telephone, fax or mail, or email or internet. And this is what the new demographic information addendum actually looks like. This is the format that we'll have to become comfortable with. At the top of the disclosure, you'll notice a new disclosure paragraph. This will need to be provided or read to the borrower. We'll go into this in greater detail as we move through this training. Also notice there are new free-form fields where the borrower can enter more specific information regarding ethnicity and race. There are also new disaggregate race and ethnicity fields that can more specifically identify, again, their race and ethnicity. At the bottom, there is a new section noted for information taken based on visual observation or the surname information. And at the very bottom is a part of a disclosure that nails down exactly how that demographic information was provided. Again, face-to-face, telephone, interview, fax or mail, or email or internet. The new government monitoring information selection options. There are 15 new disaggregate government monitoring information options and 3 new free-form fields, as already mentioned. This is just a closer look at what they actually look like. Right now, we're used to the aggregate fields such as Hispanic or Latino, or a race, American Indian or Alaskan Native. It doesn't get into the disaggregate information until you look at the, for instance, Asian. We now have Asian Indian, we have Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, Korean. The disaggregate just gets a little more detailed regarding the race and ethnicity of our borrowers. Now, a borrower may select a disaggregate category without selecting the aggregate category. So there are a bunch of different variations whereby the borrower can enter this information. So we're just going to quickly go through what this may look like. For example, if the borrower only states that they're Mexican, they do not also select Hispanic or Latino, that's okay. A borrower can also choose to identify as Hispanic or Latino and not Hispanic or Latino, meaning they can choose both of them. Even if it seems confusing or doesn't seem right, we take the borrower's word for it. A new change as well is a borrower may identify themselves as both male and female. So if they're just selecting, and right now we have just select option for male or female, now they may select both. A borrower may also select an other option without providing a free-form response. Additionally, the borrower may provide a free-form response without indicating any other at all. So this is a change compared to what we currently have. So they can put the other with no free-form explanation. So they can put as much information or as vague amount of information as they desire. A borrower may opt to provide the name of a principal or enrolled tribe regarding whether or not they are selecting an American Indian or an Alaskan Native. Okay, so again, they have the choice whether they're going to select this or not. And if the borrower provides a free-form response, they have to indicate their response exactly as provided, even if it doesn't really sound applicable or, again, doesn't make sense. So as we have here, gummy bear, if that's what the borrower desires to put in that free form, then we simply take it and put it in there. It's not necessarily our job to make sense of it. It's simply our job to gather this government monitoring information. Now, the collection method for the government monitoring information is based on how this specific information is obtained from the borrower, really regardless of how the remainder of the application is taken. For example, if you get information from a pre-qualification without the government monitoring information over the phone, but then collect the government monitoring information in person after they find a property and then submit a full application, then the application is taken via a face-to-face. So we're going to go a little more detail regarding these 4 different options: the face-to-face, telephone, email or internet, or mail or fax. But starting off with the face-to-face, if a borrower declines to provide the government monitoring information in face-to-face interview, the mortgage advisor must note this on the document or LOS and collect the information based on visual observation or based on their surname. Now, what this means is we can either write it, that they decline the information on the document, or if we are doing it electronically in a face-to-face situation, we can actually enter this in the conversation log in, say, Integra. And this includes electronic submissions with some sort of video component, meaning we're taking the application via Skype, FaceTime, some sort of video component that we can still see them face-to-face. This is still considered a face-to-face application regarding the collection of government monitoring information. It requires the mortgage advisor to complete the visual observation or surname selection or section of the new addendum if we're going face-to-face. If we're doing it via telephone, we must provide the disclosure in all options verbally. We have to go through great detail if we're taking an application over the phone to make sure they have all the information. So they must complete all sections unless the borrower indicates they do not wish to provide the information for all the 3 government monitoring categories. If we're getting an application or collecting this information via email or internet, the borrower needs to use and submit the demographic information addendum for these applications. Unless you meet with the borrower face-to-face after receiving an incomplete applications, and do not collect on the basis of observation or surname. Mail or fax collection, the borrower needs to use and submit the demographic information addendum for these applications. So we need to make sure we provided those addendums specifically when the borrower is mailing or faxing their application information. Again, unless you meet with the borrower face-to-face after receiving an incomplete application, we don't collect on the basis of visual observation or surname again. Now, at the very bottom of the disclosure or new addendum, we have to make sure we're filling out all the information correctly. This should reflect how the government monitoring information was collected, regardless of how the other application information was taken. So if we took the application via internet, but actually gathered the government monitoring information over the phone, we would have to show this demographic information was provided through, we'd have to mark it as telephone interview. So we're going to go through a little more detail here. The telephone collection. So if we're gathering this information via telephone, we have to read this entire disclosure before asking for any government monitoring information. And this really isn't a burden because it's explaining, it's a very good explanation as to why we have to collect this information. We're not just prying into their personal life. This statement that is read to the borrower really explains that it's for their protection, make sure there's no discrimination that's going on in the industry. And it's a nice explanation. So when you're taking it via telephone, we have to read this. So make sure you get a copy of this. Step 2, read all race, sex, and ethnicity options in order that they appear on the demographic information addendum or LOS. So there's no need really to skip around or skip any of the options as listed. We have to go through in order just to make sure we don't miss anything. And for each free-form field, indicate that they have the option to provide another designation that is not on the form. So they can be as detailed as they want. If the borrower declines to provide ethnicity, do not assume they also want to decline sex and race unless they indicate they do not want to provide any of the demographic information. If the borrower expresses that they want to make a specific choice prior to reading all of the available options, mark their selections and continue reading the remainder. So don't just assume you're finished if you've started, say, the race information. Make sure they have all options when you're taking information over the phone. The borrower can select as many race and ethnicity selections as they want. Again, they control it. Give them all the information, let them select as much as they want, and input the information in the system exactly as provided by the borrower, even if you think it may be inaccurate or doesn't make sense. So it's, again, not our job to make sense of it. It's simply our job to gather it and enter it exactly as they've given it. And if the borrower says they do not want to provide all or part of the government monitoring information, document their selections accordingly. We just have to make it clear. Never guess based on visual observation if the borrower indicates they do not want to provide the information. And we'll get into more detail as to when we can guess based on visual observation and how to do that. And our compliance department gave us a nice little tip. If you aren't sure what to document based on the borrower's statement, summarize what you think should be selected and ask them to confirm. So go back, read it again, and make sure that the information that we provide is exactly as the borrower desires it. Now, if this information is collected via internet, email, mail, and fax collection, first step is use the right collection form. The standard Finance of America application through our website is going to have all the correct information, so we don't have to worry about that. But if for some reason we're using some other type of application platform, please send it out to legal for confirmation that it's actually compliant. We want to make sure what we're using is properly presenting this information to our borrowers, really so that we make sure we're in compliance. We don't want to be out of compliance on this HMDA requirement here. It's pretty important. And if you receive an application via email, mail, or fax without the new demographic information addendum, or with incomplete information, you're going to need to contact the borrower to obtain the new information. So use the proper instructions for the channel in which you contact them for the updated information. Now, you can't guess on the borrower's behalf based simply on the information listed on an old 1003. And we can't just be transferring that old 1003 information. Step 2, accurately document the borrower's selections. The borrower can select as many race and ethnicity selections as they want. As we've already mentioned, they control it here. Let them choose as many as they want. Input the information into the system exactly as provided by the borrower, even if you think, again, it doesn't make sense or it's inaccurate. If the borrower says they don't want to provide all or part of the government monitoring information, document their selections accordingly. Never guess based on that visual observation if the borrower indicates they do not want to provide the information. Now we get to the face-to-face collection. So we got some changes here. When you're taking this information face-to-face, first of all, we have to ask the applicant for their government monitoring selections. We always have to bring the demographic addendum to a face-to-face meeting with the borrower and have them fill it out on the addendum. Of course, this is just going to be part of our disclosures, so it will be included, but make sure that it's there. And ask the borrower to read the addendum and point out the disclosures and instructions. So when we're over the phone, we do have to read that full paragraph. When we're in person, we just have to make sure we're presenting them with that paragraph for them to read through. And if you do not have the demographic addendum, the disclosure must be made orally and all options presented in the order in which they appear on the form. Again, make sure we're presenting all this information. And for this reason, the demographic addendum should be brought to all face-to-face meetings and to take the application. Should go without saying. Step 2, review the applicant's selections. After the borrower has filled out the addendum, review their selections to determine if they've opted not to provide a government monitoring selection for race, sex, or ethnicity. If the borrower decides not to provide all or some of the government monitoring data in a face-to-face application, you must make a selection on the borrower's behalf based on visual observation. So this is when we can make the visual observation. For this reason, it's critical to review the application prior to entering the selections into the system. Step 3, selections based on visual observation or surname. This is how we go about selecting the visual observations. If the borrower declines to provide any or some of the government monitoring information in a face-to-face interview, the mortgage advisor must collect this information on the basis of visual observation or surname. You should make this visual observation or surname collection as soon as the application is complete and before entering it in the system. This is significant here. Only the mortgage advisor can guess based on the visual observation or surname. So we can't have our loan officer assistant, transaction coordinators, our processors can't be making this. Only the mortgage advisor can guess based on this visual information. The visual observation should be on the face-to-face meeting in what you observe, not based on any other identifying documents. So we're not considering face-to-face by just using the driver's license. So we have to take this based on an actual face-to-face meeting. Only make a visual observation or surname selection if the borrower expressly declines to provide this information in a face-to-face interview. Step 3, you can only select an aggregate option when collection based on visual observation. So when we are actually making a selection based on visual observation or surname, we can't go into the disaggregate information. We can't be guessing the real fine-tuned race, ethnicity options. You know, we can only take the old aggregate information: white, black, African American, or Asian, American Indian, Alaskan, Native, no tribes, no principal tribes, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and then of course male or female. You can only select one option per government monitoring category for the race, sex, and ethnicity. Again, this is based on visual observation or surname, only one option. Note in the addendum that the borrower declined to provide the information and that the information was collected on the basis of visual observation or surname. So if you're taking it on a wet doc, then you would literally write it on the paper saying that they declined. Step 4, complete the visual observation section of the addendum. So we just need to make sure we're properly collecting this information. This section really should only be completed for applications taken face-to-face, because it says yes or no based on how the information was gathered. Was it the ethnicity, sex, or race was collected via visual observation or surname or not? Select which government monitoring information was taken based on visual observation or surname. So there may be some of it that was collected based on visual and some not. If the borrower fails to provide all or part of the government monitoring information when submitting the application by some other channel, the mortgage advisor subsequently meets with the applicant in person or over the phone, and they must ask for this information again and follow the steps face-to-face for that collection type. This is only applicable if the applicant leaves the section completely blank when submitting by another collection method, not if they select or do not wish to provide. This is if they just completely skip over that section altogether. For example, the applicant has sent the application via mail, but left the sex section blank. You meet the applicant then the next day or over the phone. And in this case, you can provide the disclosure and ask the information based on that type of information gathering. So if they don't wish to provide it, you must collect the information on the basis of visual observation or surname following a face-to-face follow-up. All right, so those are the specifics of how we go about gathering the information. We're just going to briefly take a look at what this new government monitoring information section looks like, both in Epic and Destiny. First of all, in Epic, we'll start there. Now, all we have to do is go to the URLA for Government Monitoring Information, which is the exact same place that we've always gone to gather the HMDA information. Except now the system will be updated, and as soon as it is January 1st, 2018, all of this information will be opened up for us to be able to manipulate. Now at the very top of this page, the Government Monitoring Information, this is where we're going to enter how this government monitoring information was gathered. Again, face-to-face, telephone, fax or mail, or email and internet. The next page, or the next section, just right down below, is going to list the 4 different types of information. We have ethnicity, race, sex, and then how the information was collected, whether or not it was collected based on visual observation, rather. Next, for ethnicity completed, sex completed, and race completed values, if the application was taken face-to-face, for each data point provided by the borrower, do not check the box, just leave it blank. So for each data point completed based on visual observation or surname, that's when we check the box. Any other method, just leave it blank. Destiny is going to be very, very similar to EPIC, as in most things. It should look pretty familiar. It's just a slightly different format. So in Destiny, exact same place that we currently go to, again, to enter our government monitoring information. It's just in the application information under government monitoring. Same as we had in EPIC. At the very top is the application was taken by, and again, we select the way the information for the government monitoring information was taken. The same format, right down below, we have ethnicity, race, sex, and whether the information was collected via visual observation or surname. And then finally, we need to make sure we're selecting whether the information was collected by visual observation or surname. So this is the same setup, same structure as EPIC. This will all go into effect, as mentioned, January 1st, 2018, for any applications taken there or beyond. And that is the extent of the training today. So we will wrap this up here. If you have any questions moving forward, feel free to reach out to production support at financeofamerica.com, and we'll be happy to help you out. Thank you very much.